So as I said, the next category is agriculture. Traditional agriculture tends to be more compatible with long-term wildlife population persistence. And organic agriculture has been shown to support more birds than non-organic agriculture. This shows some data on that, so the impacts of organic farming on biodiversity. And so they've looked at plants, birds, mammals, earthworms, spiders, beetles, bees, butterflies, other arthropods, and soil microbes. And you can see that most of the bars here are blue, showing positive effects of organic agriculture on a wide variety of different types of wildlife as well as plants. There are occasionally negative implications, but most of these effects increase biodiversity. So showing that organic is a good choice for conservation. So that's another way that you can work towards conservation, is to purchase things that are produced as organic agriculture as opposed to non-organic. Another good example is shade growth coffee. Some of you may have heard of this, some of you may not. So coffee is typically grown in the sun, and so this shows what typical coffee plantations look like, where most of your coffee probably comes from. And this usually replaces native rainforest in the areas where coffee is grown. You can also grow coffee underneath a rainforest canopy. And they found that retaining this canopy cover of these taller trees over the coffee plants increases bird abundance and diversity in the New World tropics. So if your coffee comes from Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Colombia, Venezuela, places like that, then shade-grown coffee is the best choice for conservation. And they found that you can get up to 40 different tree species per farm, and then that dramatically increases bird biodiversity. Interestingly, there's some evidence from Kenya that the opposite is true. However, coffee is a native plant from Ethiopia, so I'm not really sure what types of ecosystems exactly this is referring to, but these types of practices that are good for conservation may be regional, so you may need to find the best thing for each region, because the ecosystem in the rainforest in Central and South America is very different than what you would find in Kenya and Ethiopia and places like that. All right, so the next two things I'm going to talk about are United States programs that provide money for conservation and help also with ecosystem function as part of the Farm Bill that is funded every year by Congress. So the first one is called the Conservation Reserve Program. It is, as I said, part of the Farm Bill. The idea is that it pays farmers to take fields out of cultivation for 10 or more years for soil conservation and wildlife habitat. You'll have a video to watch on this. The original reason for it was soil conservation after the Dust Bowl. So people were super concerned after the Dust Bowl swept away lots of really good topsoil from the middle of the country after a drought. And so they wanted to make sure that there was soil conservation programs to help keep that from happening again, because losing topsoil is not good for biodiversity or for agriculture. But there's also ways that you can support wildlife as well. And so this map shows where most of the conservation reserve properties are. There aren't very many in Louisiana, but you can see in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma and into kind of Colorado and Kansas and up in the northwestern part of the country, there is a lot of acres of farm in this CRP program. And a lot of these are marginal places that aren't that good for farming. They're not producing very well. And so they're basically paying farmers to do something more productive with the land. So I'll have you watch this video. A similar program is called the Wetland Reserve Program. So it's a similar idea, but it's only for farms that flood regularly. And it pays farmers to take fields out of cultivation for 30 plus years if they flood frequently or used to be wetlands. And the idea is, again, to have a place to absorb water. These farms are not very productive. The farmers lose their crops all the time because they get flooded out. And this is where Louisiana actually has more land. So Louisiana is the state with the most wetland reserve properties. So we have mostly wetland reserve, not conservation reserve programs, but if you're near other states, they may have more conservation reserve programs than wetland reserve. And so there'll be another video to help kind of explain more, and you can see some of what the wetland reserve program looks like.